Part 2. Traditional Chinese Medicine, Infertility, Crazy Social Death Patients. Author, Cold Shower in Winter. Chapter 11. Welcome. When Bai Ye saw someone enter the store, he immediately put on a smile. However, what made him a little puzzled was that the other party, a man and 3 women, actually came in at the same time. Could it be that the young couple was embarrassed to come to see a doctor, and they brought relatives and friends? Bai Ye didn't think much about it, he just felt strange in his heart. And the live broadcast room. Haha. I can't imagine that anyone dares to come to the anchor to see infertility. I'm really not afraid of social death. This is a big heart for patients, the anchor has a lot of bad taste, be careful of privacy exposure. Hey, what are you talking about? The anchor and the patient are all meritorious, and now infertility is a hot topic. This is a bloody lesson for us. I understand the truth, but why did the other party come with a man and 3 women? Hee, I don't believe that the anchor is so young and understands Chinese medicine. This time he will definitely lose his appearance. These 4 people don't look like they are seeing a doctor, they are not a young couple, maybe they are faked by Chinese medicine. I'm lost. Chinese medicine fights fakes, the anchor runs quickly. Otherwise, the little face will be spent. Although these netizens have just watched Bai Ye's pulse throughout the whole process, they generally know Bai Ye's level. But there are still many people who say they can't accept it, especially those who are new to it. How is that possible? The anchor is also in his early 20s, how can he have the strength to take the pulse? So I think it's greasy, maybe the patient club actor in front of me, so I treat Ji Bakang and others as fake Chinese medicine to fight fakes. Department of Infertility, Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Moda University. TCM Outpatient Department. Happens to have free time. Under Lin Wanfan's instructions, a bunch of interns opened the live broadcast room and stationed in Bai, and communicated at the same time. I still don't believe in the anchor, it is impossible to learn the pulse technique at such a young age, and the pulse of the human body is complex and changeable, which requires the accumulation of clinical experience. Seconded, think about the pulse that our graduate students or doctoral students learn in school doesn't count, and we have to come out for internships for several years. Yes, these different connections don't jump according to textbooks, and with all kinds of other interference factors, it's difficult to diagnose. So, I think there's something greasy in it, maybe the anchor invited an actor. When these interns saw a young man who was more than half younger than themselves sitting in the old Chinese medicine hall, they felt a great sense of disobedience. Especially when I heard Mr. Lin say that the anchor is proficient in taking the pulse, I feel even more incredible. You must know that in their group, there are still more than 30 or 40 people who are studying for a doctorate, but they dare not say that they are proficient in pulse technology. If this white knight can do it, wouldn't it be a slap in the face? No, it's the anchor recommended by Mr. Lin, and it's an old Chinese medicine hall located in the magic capital, so the level should not be low. Even if he can take the pulse, but Chinese medicine is not only about taking the pulse, but also about prescription dispensing, acupuncture, etc. Look, if this anchor only knows how to take the pulse, and he can't even prescribe medicine, there must be a problem. Don't be noisy, there's a patient coming. Very well, let's take a closer look, this time he can't hide it from us professionals. White Knight didn't know that he was being noticed by professionals. His eyes looked at the men and 3 women who had entered the store, and he quickly judged that it was the man who had brought the 3 girls over. At the same time, it can be seen at a glance that there is something wrong with the man's complexion, which is obviously an overindulgent face, with crooked facial features and a greasy feeling of nausea. But he asked politely, "Hello sir, please sit down, is there anything wrong with your body?" There are many causes of infertility, and it is always possible to start by asking. Bai Ye's tone is gentle, making people feel like a spring breeze, giving people the demeanor of an old Chinese medicine doctor. Made Ji Bakang and the three young girls who entered the door at the same time feel a lot more at ease. However, hearing Bai Ye's question, Ji Wavelength's face was stunned, and he immediately spoke. Dr. Bai, that's right, I'm taking my girlfriends to see a doctor this time. Just look at that, Dr. Bai understands. As he spoke, he pulled his three girlfriends to the consultation table. When his three young and beautiful girlfriends heard this, they glanced at each other, nodded their heads, and then looked at Ji Wavelength a little strangely. When Bai Ye heard this, his eyes were stunned. He suspected he had misheard. The three fashionable girls in front of me don't say how beautiful they are, but their complexions are really good. From their faces and spirits, it can be seen that they are in good health. On the contrary, Ji Wavelength's physiognomy is very bad. If he lies in a dark room, he will be treated as a corpse if he is not careful. That's it, how can he have the confidence to say that he is treating them? Moreover, good guys, these three girls are still his girlfriends. I really don't know what brought them together. I know that Dr. Bai is upright, and I like Dr. Bai to be upright. Ji Changle laughed and patted the shoulders of his three girlfriends, like a trained secretary. Dr. Bai found out what was wrong with them, although he said, no matter what treatment prescription was prescribed, I took it. In a word, there is no shortage of money. Bai Ye was stunned again, and couldn't help asking, then what if your girlfriend is pregnant? Don't forget that our country is monogamous. What do you want, Dr. Bai? Hearing the question, Ji Bakang fiddled with the Rolex gold watch on his wrist. Naturally, which baby is excellent and which one is married? When the words fell, Bai Ye understood that the style of the season's wavelength was similar to that of the ancient world. But what he is curious about is that the season wavelength himself is not a little self-aware. Traditional Chinese medicine, infertility, crazy social death patients. Author, Cold Shower in Winter. Chapter 12. Live Room. Damn, is this the world of the rich? It's an upstart. Woo, we're still in manual transmission, and they've already automated it. Ahem, what if you have money, you don't have infertility troubles? Psychologically unbalanced, please let the anchor let him die. It can only be said that Ji Wavelength's operation is indeed very coquettish, as if it makes people return to the era of male superiority and female inferiority. This also made netizens fully understand what it means to have money to make ghosts grind. The concept of the gap between the rich and the poor has become more profound. Therefore, they all wish to make the quarter wavelength a little ugly, so as to pull some of the capabilities of the quarter wavelength down to a level acceptable to the public. The hospital affiliated with the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology of Moda University. Lin Wanfan's interns were stunned when they saw Ji Wavelength. This season Wavelength has been infertile with us for 3 years, and this kid alone has more than 10 girlfriends. There is nothing wrong with his girlfriend's examination, and the quality of the man's tadpoles is almost qualified, and he is not pregnant yet, but he is very mysterious. I don't understand. 20% of infertility is not clear about the cause, and if you can't get pregnant, you can't get pregnant. I remember that Mr. Lin said that there is intermittent weak sperm in the season, which is a deficiency of kidney qi from the perspective of traditional Chinese medicine. Indeed, we have also prescribed Chinese medicine for him, but unfortunately it is still the case. He also cooperated with eating raw sperm tablets, which is equivalent to forcibly raising the quality of his tadpoles, which is an overdraft. Just look at his face. This season's wavelength can't be cured by us. I really think that I can see the fame in the anchor, it's really whimsical. The other side. After Bai Ye learned about the situation of Ji Wavelength, he couldn't help but be stunned, and couldn't help but speak directly. You've had so many female companions, and they didn't have any major problems with the inspection, so have you ever thought that it was your own problem? What are you talking about, Dr. Bai? Ji Wavelength picked at his nails, looking like a matter of course. It's because Western medicine hasn't been able to detect anything wrong that I asked you to see a Chinese doctor. Besides, I check the quality of the tadpoles every month, and they are all qualified. Hearing G Wavelength say this, Baya thought about it, and couldn't help but ask. It's just qualified, what kind of drugs have you taken every time you have been examined? As soon as these words came out, G Wavelength was stunned for a moment, then nodded. Sure enough, he was a famous doctor, he didn't say anything, and he was seen by Dr. Bai. Unlike Western medicine, it takes a lot of instruments to see the famous hall, which is expensive and time-consuming. If I knew this was the case, I should have come to Dr. Bai earlier. Stop, don't eat. Bai said directly. Ah, hearing this, G Wavelength was stunned. Taking those medicines has indeed proved that it is good for tadpoles. Baya ignored his reaction and continued to ask. Have you been dizzy and sleepy lately, walking with a floating feeling, yawning all the time, and a sense of unreality? Huh, it's a little. Ji Bakane thought for a while and nodded, maybe I'm too tired from work. As he spoke, he immediately changed the subject. Dr. Bai, hurry up and check their pulse. There's nothing wrong with them, yours is more serious. Baya looked at G Wavelength and said in a long voice. Hearing Baya's comment, G Wavelength was suddenly stunned and couldn't help but say. No, I've been checked in a regular hospital, and my tadpole is fine. And since I'm fine, it's definitely their problem, and they've admitted it themselves. Speaking of which, the quarter wavelength can't stop. Dr. Bai, you may not know, in order to get pregnant early, I also asked the master to tell my fortune. I also spent a lot of money to repair the feng shui of their portal. It's all changed to butterfly wings, because butterflies represent hope. G Wavelength looked proud, but Baya was stunned. Wait a minute, what butterfly wings? Why didn't I get it? Baya stared at the silent girls next to him with curious eyes. Seeing that these girls were all flushed, they twisted for a while before sending a representative to explain. Ji Xiao thinks we are not beautiful below. So I found a plastic surgery hospital, we have all done medical aesthetics. I spent more than 600,000 yuan on Ji Xiao in total. It is said that the more money you spend, the better your feng shui will be, and the easier it will be to conceive a baby. What kind of bullshit logic is this? Baya directly lay down in a big groove in his heart. The color and size of cherry blossoms are originally different from person to person, so aren't you afraid of damaging their function? These girls also have really big hearts, and they seem to believe in them. Baya suddenly felt powerless to complain, and said leisurely. Ahem, the cherry blossoms are closed immediately, and the flowers bloom when squatting, please respect their ecology, they have nothing to do with pregnancy. Live room at this time. Haha. It's just an outrageous mother opening the door to her outrageous son, outrageous to the home. Laugh at me, God is really fair, giving a person money will inevitably deprive him of a part of his IQ. The anchor is so literate, the cherry blossoms are closed immediately, and the flowers bloom when squatting, it's so vivid. Strange knowledge has been learned again. Xiao Sheng has the courage to face a couple, when he feels tears, he hates to say goodbye to birds. Is it a feeling or a job? This year's netizens are so talented, Li Bai is willing to bow down when he comes. What's, shame on you, girls, please go out and leave some space for us boys. Hey, you're going to call the police, I'm going to lose a dead man upstairs. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Traditional Chinese medicine, infertility, crazy social death patients. Author, Cold Shower in Winter. Chapter 13. Seeing the wavelength of the season in the white night, it is still a bee like that doesn't care and has no self-knowledge. With the benevolent attitude of a doctor, he decided to give him a wave of ruthlessness. So he carefully observed his physiognomy and said in a serious manner, "Have you felt anything strange about having sex with your female companion recently? Is it that the time is either super long, sweating profusely, or weak halfway? No matter what method is used, you can't make a pillar of Optimus. And isn't sleep bad, and the palms of your hands and feet will feel cold in summer? Sometimes, isn't it particularly loud and sensitive, and there is a panic reaction?" White Knight said so much in one basket. G Wavelength's arrogant mentality just now was stunned, and then he was directly stunned, and then wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, and couldn't help but have huge doubts and exclamations in his heart. It's amazing. Dr. Bai knew everything about my situation before he could take my pulse. This is the ability of the old Chinese medicine doctor to ask for the hope, which is too powerful. My body is open in front of him, like an instruction manual, to see it. And not to mention, in addition to others, in terms of privacy, when I was doing Zhou Gong's gift with my girlfriend, I really either didn't come out, or I collapsed in the middle. This kind of secret from the bottom of my heart can't even be seen by Dr. Bai. It's amazing. Looks like I'm not looking for the wrong person. This will not only solve my girlfriend's infertility problems, but it seems to solve my problems as well. What a double kill. Although it's a bit embarrassing for my little secret to be exposed, it doesn't matter if I witness the demeanor of the old Chinese medicine. Thinking of this, G Wavelength was still complacent about his vision. At this time, when G Bakang's women heard Bai Ye's words, they were all amazed in their hearts. Although they are competitive, they play with G Wavelength, so they are often together, and they are very clear about the situation of quarter wavelength. It can be said that Dr. Bai's judgment was accurate. Especially recently, G Wavelength's performance in bed has really made them miserable. For this reason, they also complained to each other, saying that either their knees were red on their knees, or G Wavelength was weak halfway, and they felt like chopsticks stirring tofu without feeling. But I still have to pretend to be satisfied to cooperate, it's really tiring. There are other aspects, and Dr. Bai is also like a god. For example, when he was out of the house, G Wavelength would shake his body and flick when he was out of the house, and he would look very cowardly and obscene when he suddenly heard a loud sound of the door closing, the screaming and playing of children. This is really very detailed. Is Dr. Bai really an old Chinese medicine doctor? Such a young old Chinese medicine doctor is really amazing. Thinking of this, G Wavechang's girlfriend's eyes changed when they looked at Bai Ye. They may not be able to become the daughters-in-law of the G family, and they may have gynecological problems in the future, so they can come to Bai Ye for advice. Even if you can't ask for advice, it's good to feel the crit of good looks. At this time, Bai Ye didn't know what they were thinking, but asked in a serious tone. "Well, am I right?" "Oh, Dr. Bai is so right, he. G Wavelength scratched his head, looked at Bai Ye with burning eyes and said, "It seems that Dr. Bai can not only cure their problems, but also solve my minor problems." Minor question. You call this a small problem? Hearing G Wavelength's words, Bai Ye couldn't cry or laugh. It seems that he still doesn't realize the seriousness of the problem. From his face alone, it can be concluded that his body is very weak, and if he looks at his pulse, he is afraid that he will be sick. Live room. The anchor has something. Just by looking at the face, you can see so many famous halls, and sure enough, Chinese medicine is terrifying. I remembered that my mother took me to see an old Chinese medicine doctor, and I didn't dare to look up at the doctor. Haha. This patient is too cute, right? Patient, every day I wake up handsomely, annoyed. What's? It's because I can't afford it, and I really can't climb a high-level animal like the rich second generation. Haha. I'm laughing to death. Dr. Genji met the second generation of idiots, and this time the anchor is going to be killed by the society. These netizens were also shocked when they saw G-Wavelength's attitude. I can't imagine that there are such strange rich second generations in a modern city like Modu, and I really don't have any health common sense. It's really in response to the old saying, as long as I'm not embarrassed, it's someone else who is embarrassed. They were all curious about what White Knight would do next. Baya looked at G-Wavelength's premature appearance and nodded quietly. Okay, little problem. The system hasn't prompted yet, so continue to check it in depth. Okay, tongue sticks out and I'll see. AHHG Wavelength already admired Baya's medical skills, and was very cooperative, and he still fantasized about treating Baya as that kind of worldly master. Then under the advice of the White Knight, I entered the ranks of cultivators, and then I could hum and haze with my girlfriends, and use nunchucks quickly. The tongue is jagged, and the spleen is weak. Yin deficiency and internal heat, heart fire, dampness, and evil. Baya said some technical terms with a serious face. G-Wavelength doesn't understand these either, so it doesn't matter. Then he heard Baya say to let him stretch out his hand. Reach over and I'll show you your pulse. Hearing this, G-Wavelength was stunned. After watching the live broadcast of the White Knight, he knew that this was to check the root permission of his body. Inexplicably, I was a little nervous and apprehensive, and at the same time I was faintly looking forward to it. Ji Bakane rolled up his sleeves and was about to put his hand on the consultation table. Wait a minute. When Baya just stretched out his hand in G-Wavelength, his heart suddenly fell into a big groove. As soon as he sniffed, he immediately smelled a strange fishy smell on his hands. A little extrapolation, you know the approximately. Damn. This kid is really off the charts. There are so many girlfriends who actually still have traditional crafts and have fought back once before coming to check. The corpses of those children and grandchildren are still on their hands, and they are really but. What's wrong, Dr. Bai? Ji was stunned. You go wash your hands first, and remember to wash them with a cleaning solution, said Bai Yayu. Traditional Chinese medicine, infertility, crazy social death patients. Author, Cold Shower in Winter. Chapter 14. Hearing Bai's order, G-Wavelength did not doubt him, and immediately got down from his seat to wash his hands. At the same time, I admired Bai's professionalism even more. Because he remembered that Baya had just taken the pulse of a female patient and did not let her wash her hands. And you have to wash your hands, which means that you are more serious about yourself and your service will be more thoughtful. Haha, sure enough, his status as a rich second generation is respected wherever he goes. And after Ji Bakane went to the bathroom to wash his hands, his girlfriend's eyes looked at Baya more enthusiastically. Just now avoid the face of the quarter wavelength, so it will converge. Now that G wavelength is not there, they can enjoy the beauty of the prosperous world of the White Knight unscrupulously. You can sit down first, don't be stupid. Baya looked at the three girls and said. Don't we have to see a doctor, asked one girl. You don't need to. Hearing this question, Baya shook his head affirmatively. And hearing Baya say this, the three girls breathed a sigh of relief, and it was exactly as they expected. It's really tiring to cooperate with Ji Xiao to act during this time. And maybe because Ji Xiao's life is not good, the play in bed is becoming more and more perverted. But he didn't dare to offend him, for fear of cutting off his financial route. After all, he wanted to jump into the Dragon Gate. At the same time, an idea came to them in their minds. Even if they were not sick, they could find Baya to regulate their bodies. Thinking of this, the eyes of the three young and fashionable girls who looked at Baya flashed with strange heat. Live room. Oh huo, I heard that there is a difference between men and women. Does the anchor really take the pulse of male patients? It's still a bit unbelievable. The anchor is still too young, and does he need to wash his hands before taking the pulse? The anchor looks handsome when he takes the pulse, calm and concentrated, as if an old monk is in a state and enters the play in a second. 1 second into the play, haha, I'm laughing to death. It's better to say that the anchor is acting. But don't say it, the anchor's hand holding the pulse is so beautiful. The anchor can be a hand model, take more photos, and the anchor will get on the little yellow car. These netizens are still skeptical about Baye's pulse technology. Especially when Baye asked G Wavelength to wash his hands, he felt even more unbelievable and felt that something was wrong. But I can't say it. Obstetrics and Gynecology Hospital affiliated to Moda University. Lin Wanfen brought a group of intern doctors. Let the patient wash his hands before taking the pulse. Yes, all kinds of interference should be eliminated when taking the pulse, because the pulse requires the doctor to calm down and accurately grasp the patient's pulse. And the pulse also needs to be comprehensively analyzed, and it is easy to make a mistake in one step. Yes, but washing hands can cause abnormal vasoconstriction in patients, which will affect judgment. The most important thing he should have done was to ask the patient to take the watch off. So, this kid looks like an amateur. It's a pity for G Bakane, and he found the wrong doctor. These interns saw that Baye had made a mistake of common sense, and immediately started spraying. In particular, some male interns, in order to show off in front of female interns, even despise the white knight. Listening to their discussion, Lu Xiao said that the female intern who had just found Lin Wanfen didn't think so. The judgment of the face and tongue diagnosis just now, but they are all correct. It's very professional at first glance, and it's impossible not to recognize the details of whether you should wash your hands when you take the pulse. Could it be that Baye saw something strange? Thinking of this, Lu Xiao did not participate in the comments, but continued to read carefully. White knights here. After washing his hands repeatedly, Ji returned to Baye's consultation table. As instructed, he took off the gold chain and the gold Rolex watch and stretched out his hand. Baye nodded, and placed his fingers firmly on G Wavelength's wrist. In fact, he also knew the effect of cold water on the blood vessels of human skin, but in the face of the supreme pulse control technique, these small disturbances were not worth mentioning. Not for a while. With the assistance of the supreme pulse control technique, Baye understood G Wavelength's problem very clearly. This problem is really not small, I'm afraid that if it's too late, I'll be terminally ill. And this problem is also closely related to the vice of quarter wavelength. Baye seems to have seen G Wavelength's obscene action of looking for a film late at night, and specially selected those super heavy tastes, which is a manifestation of addiction. In scientific parlance, it's the Coolidge effect. Shaking his head, Baye looked at G Wavelength, and couldn't help frowning, revealing a look of regret. This made G Wavelength, who was sitting opposite, a little frightened. He was still fantasizing about a better life just now. He was already convinced of Baye's doctor, but looking at Baye's appearance, he couldn't help but wonder if he had some terminal illness. White, Dr. Baye, what's going on? Why are your brows furrowed? I'm afraid I'm not going to take a break. At this moment, G Wavelength was a little scared, and he was already more likely to be frightened when his kidney qi was deficient, so his face was a little frightened. He even doubted that Baye would take out a thick ancient book of Chinese medicine to find out his special illness in the next moment. Then nothing can be found, and then a new type of disease will be defined after him. It's a well-deserved death, but not rather. Thinking of this, G Wavelength's back couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Live room at the moment. A group of netizens looked at Baye, from gentle and elegant to strangely serious, and then saw the frowning, and suddenly had a bad premonition. The anchor won't be able to, the human pulse is so complicated, it won't jump according to the textbook. But the anchor's posture and essentials of taking the pulse are very professional. The anchor frowned. Maybe the patient has some terminal illness, right? I'm not afraid of Chinese medicine smiling, I'm afraid of Chinese medicine frowning. Looking at the anchor's appearance, will you take out your mobile phone to Baidu the next moment? What can Baidu find? If you want me to say, I should say that I should take out the dusty old medical book. Don't underestimate the anchor hasn't dropped the chain. Just when the conversation in the live broadcast room was hot, G-wavelength was also suspicious. Baiye frowned, then sighed, and spoke. And this opening shocked everyone. You, alas. With so many girlfriends, why do you have to look for study materials late at night? They are all heavy-mouthed. In the future, watch less bad films. If you want to be happy, don't have such a heavy taste. Traditional Chinese medicine, infertility, crazy social death patients. Author, Cold Shower in Winter. Chapter 15. When G-wavelength heard Baiye say this, his forehead was suddenly covered with cold sweat. These are the secrets in his heart, and after studying hard every night, he will continue to fire ammunition to practice marksmanship, which even his girlfriends don't know. It was actually seen by Baiye's pulse. Miracle doctor. However, after the sigh, a sense of shame quickly welled up again. He knew that Baiye was still live on his mobile phone, and if his relatives and friends knew that he had so many girlfriends, and he would secretly guide the tube, where would he put his face? So I can't admit it? Thinking of this, G-wavelength shook his head again and again. No. Nope. But his words had no confidence at all. Because he was immediately stunned to realize that Baiye not only found out that he would secretly read those obscure study materials at night, but also specifically pointed out that he was looking at heavy mouths. That's right, heavy mouthed. It's a secret in his secret again. You must know that there are many types of mysterious numbers, and different people's tastes are different. The choice of different types represents the psychological characteristics of each person. And Baiye can see at a glance that he likes to pay attention to his mouth. Isn't it equivalent to concluding that he is a little perverted at a glance? Who would admit that he was perverted? Especially the rich second generation like him, who attaches the most importance to face. And looking at Baiye's eyes, G-wavelength suddenly felt that he was being looked at. Biting his lower lip, he was going to bite to death and couldn't admit it. No. If you don't have a pulse, forget if you don't have your heart and kidneys, your spleen and stomach will also be bad. I'm afraid you can't control yourself. The taste is getting heavier and heavier, and you can't help making dumplings every time, right? Seeing G-wavelength's negation, Baiye smiled in his heart, and simply made it clearer. Give him a big wave of brainwashing. And hearing Baiye's question, G-wavelength's heartbeat directly cooled by half. Wouldn't it? I know that. He did find that his tastes were getting heavier and heavier, and he really couldn't control them. The time spent looking for study materials late at night is much greater than the time it takes for the rocket to take off, and then it is out of control. I obviously have so many girlfriends, but I prefer to study hard alone late at night. However, he only regarded it as a personal fetish, and never thought that it would affect fertility. After all, he was quite qualified in the physical examination. At this time, Baiye looked at G-wavelength's clumsy acting skills and smiled in his heart. Then look at the system panel. Just now, the system has a prompt. The host is detected and the diagnosis begins. Select Diagnosis Result Publication Method to enable. Option 1, vaguely say the patient's problem and don't let the patient die. Use obscure words to explain the situation to the patient, but the patient is likely to not understand, and if he does not understand, it is difficult to correct. Reward, none. Option 2, watch less films, less contact with heavy mouths, and start quitting sex. Pointing out the patient's vices mercilessly, explaining the root causes, and making him understand the dangers of this behavior. Reward, the full version of God-level acupuncture. Full version of God-level acupuncture, acupuncture knowledge about the whole body of the human body, which can really save people with one needle and kill people with one needle. Special task: use God-level acupuncture to condition the patient's body and improve his kidney deficiency. Special task reward: the world's most advanced infertility testing equipment, including color ultrasound machine, ultrasonic detector, nuclear magnetic resonance instrument, tadpole detector, and so on. Looking at this reward, Bai's heart was overjoyed. I can't help but be a little excited. This is the full version of God-level acupuncture. Just by understanding the primary God-level acupuncture, I have already spied on the breadth and profundity of Chinese medicine. This complete version of God-level acupuncture is difficult to compare with the medical skills recorded in many ancient books. Compared with Western medicine, Chinese medicine is a bit weird, that is, it has never changed for thousands of years, just like there is the legacy of ancient civilization. And many ancient recorded immortal treatments, such as craniotomy, Fihi divine needle, etc., are not believed by the world because they are too mysterious. But it may be real, and Bai knows that the system is powerful, and this complete version of God-level acupuncture may really have an exaggerated effect in ancient books. To put it simply, this God-level acupuncture technique can completely tie Yang Wei into Chen Bo. This made Bai's eyes change when he looked at G wavelength, and there was no longer any dislike before, some were just fanatical. And that's not all. White Knight soon saw that under the quest panel, there were also special quests. This directly made Bai ecstatic. Traditional Chinese medicine pays attention to dialectics and materialism, and has a profound philosophical idea of the unity of nature and man, but seeing a doctor, especially infertility, is not a panacea. If it can be combined with the diagnosis of Western medicine, it can give full play to the characteristics of Chinese medicine. To put it simply, in Bai's view, the energy level of Chinese medicine is above that of Western medicine, and Western medicine can completely assist Chinese medicine and let Chinese medicine play its role to the fullest. Therefore, he has long wanted to have a set of scientific testing equipment. However, those high-precision equipment are not cheap, and ordinary people may not be able to buy them, and complex procedures such as reporting are required. But with system rewards, it's much more convenient, and it's a lot of trouble. At this moment, Bai's eyes looking at G wavelength changed again. It's like looking at a special mob that pops gold coins. White, Dr. Bai, don't talk nonsense. Looking at Bai's strange eyes, G wavelength felt a chill in his back, and he didn't believe that Bai could still install surveillance in his house. Anyway, it's speculation, as long as he insists on not admitting it, he can't be convicted. Otherwise, as soon as you admit it, you won't die. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Traditional Chinese medicine, infertility, crazy social death patients. Author, Cold Shower in Winter. Chapter 16. Looking at G wavelength's rebuttal, Bai sighed leisurely, and then the corners of his mouth hooked up a good-looking arc. In fact, even if you don't take the pulse, you can deduce his preference for heavy mouths. Because G wavelength already has so many girlfriends, he also rewards himself. It means that the brain has become addicted to those obscure learning materials. According to the Coolidge effect, the threshold of desire demand will be raised, and the taste will naturally become heavier and heavier, which is inevitable. Combined with the pulse, it can be determined that the quaternary wavelength has the problem of igniting the rocket in the middle of the night. Looking at G wavelength's dodging eyes left and right, with a look of disbelief in horror, Bai smiled again. It's been a habit for a few years, at least not less than 10 years. It was obviously a question sentence, but Bai said it in an affirmative tone. This made G wavelength's heart chuckle again, and then his back was cold. Even if Dr. Bai installed a monitor in his house, it is impossible for him to install a monitor 10 years ago, right? He has been studying late at night for more than 10 years. Since he was in junior high school, he has been counting for 15 years. It's just that there have been no problems, and I have felt unwell in the last few months. But it may also be because of old age and tiredness from work. After all, I have a lot of socializing, and I stay up late drinking and smoking. Ji Bakane was in a worried mood, thinking about how to answer. Seeing that Ji Wavelength was silent, Baya continued to speak. 10 years would have been fine. After all, your family is good, you have good food, and your foundation is not bad. But it's over exploring late at night, staying up late and sitting for a long time to make dumplings is the most hurtful. You still make dumplings several times in a row overnight, and there is no dumpling filling, isn't it not delicious? The voice fell. Buzz. When G Wavelength heard Baya say this, he suddenly felt that his mouth was dry, and his whole brain was about to explode. I even know the details of making dumplings overnight. Dr. Bai, you can't be a roundworm in my stomach, right? It's too powerful to refute. G felt that he had reached a dead end. He couldn't resist Dr. Bai. Dr. Bai's eyes were like X-rays, and he could see him through. How can you play this? It's like playing cards with the other party. People have clairvoyance, and they can't win at all. He did make dumplings several times a night. On the one hand, he was not satisfied, and on the other hand, he was prone to misfire recently, and he wanted to train his sensitivity more. To put it bluntly, he had some premature ejaculation symptoms, and he blamed the probe for being too sensitive. This is too private, and if you admit it, it will really kill you. Sighing, all of a sudden, Ji Bakane realized that Dr. Bai should not harm himself. Isn't it just a waste of protein? Looking at the way Dr. Bai has been frowning, maybe his other health aspects are really serious. If you think about it, social death is better than suffering from a terminal illness. Thinking of this, he was about to say something. Only to find out. Bai's gaze didn't look at him anymore, but turned to his three girlfriends. I just listened to what Baya said. It's not easy for you to have a party with Ji Bakane. And the three girlfriends couldn't help but be stunned when they heard Baya suddenly turn their heads to talk to them, and then look at Baya's clear eyes, and then their hearts warmed. Isn't it? Just now when they listened to Baya's consultation with Ji Shao, they suddenly woke up. No wonder Ji Shao has so many strange requests. It turns out that he has read too many heavy learning materials. It's really a miracle, doctor. You can see the clue at a glance. It's really hard for them. Ji Shao may have seen too much of those, so he asked them to drink more water before they started their stomachs, saying that they should hold their bladders. What kind of logic is this? Later, I learned that Ji Shao is very good, and he likes to scatter money, but he prefers to be sprayed. Well, then let's meet it, but who would have thought that there would be more bizarre requirements, so I won't expand on it. They are almost suspicious that Ji Shao has a mental illness, but it's not easy to bring it up. After all, the habits of rich people are weird. They still wanted to please Ji Shao more, so they could only hold back. It's almost distorted their psychology, and the bitterness of this can't be told to outsiders. Unexpectedly, Baya understood their difficulties with a look in the white night today, and suddenly there was a feeling that made them cry. However, even if White Knight said so, it's not good for them to say anything in front of Ji Bakane. It's just that their blushing expressions have said everything, and they can't wait to find a hole to get into, and these have completely fallen into the eyes of netizens in the live broadcast room. At this time, G Wavelength finally couldn't stand it anymore, and scratched his head in embarrassment with a blushing face. The little couple just now may not know, but Ji Bakane knows that White Knight is broadcasting. Doesn't this mean that many people across the country know about their fetishes, and it's too embarrassing? Thinking of this, G Wavelength hesitated for a long time before he couldn't help but speak. White, Dr. Bai, you know all about it, so don't continue to pursue it. Isn't it just a waste of more protein? I have a regular diet, and I eat raw sperm tablets every day. Ji Bakang obviously lacks confidence in speaking, and just wants to quickly perfunctory the topic and talk about how his symptoms are alleviated. At this time, the live broadcast room. Seeing G Wavelength take the initiative to admit it, the barrage exploded in an instant. Damn, the anchor is a little capable, and you can see that this guy likes to talk heavy. Yes, you can still see the preference when you take the pulse. This anchor is too strong, I still don't believe it, but this guy admitted it verbally later. It's outrageous. With so many resources of the opposite sex, does this guy still need to reward himself? I don't understand. Upstairs, my Wu Qian real name tells you with personal experience, this craft is addictive when paired with late night study. I, Liao Maofan, can also prove this, and the taste will only get heavier and heavier. Ha ha ha, a large-scale social death scene. I believe this guy must regret coming here. I didn't expect the anchor to be so serious. I'm laughing to death. The anchor frowned for a long time. It was actually because this guy was guiding the tube in the middle of the night. Oops, shame on you, boys, please go out and leave a little space for us girls. Just now, those netizens who were still questioning Bai Yes pulse medicine skills, after seeing Bai Yes operation, are now completely convinced. Originally, I thought it was outrageous to see the patient's taste by taking the pulse, but the layers of torture behind it actually confirmed it. What a shock! But shock is shock. Is it really good for the anchor to shake out other people's privacy like this? Is a rich boy, but it is really a large-scale social death scene. Traditional Chinese medicine, infertility, crazy social death patients. Author, Cold Shower in Winter. Chapter 17. Obstetrics and Gynecology Hospital affiliated to Motu University. Lin Wanfan's intern doctor. They were still complaining about Bai just now that they didn't know how to diagnose the pulse, and they were going to see Bai's appearance. After seeing the process of Bai's pulse, the audience fell silent again. Don't wait for their evaluation. Some male interns were surprised to find that many of the female interns' eyes lit up when they looked at the white knight. Yes. I have to admit that Bai's pulse looks very similar to that of an old Chinese medicine doctor, with a good appearance, calm and concentrating, just like the effect presented in a textbook. And Bai's fingering is also very particular, and the clear-eyed person can't jump out of the problem at all. It's a slap in the face. Just said that Bai was a layman, but he was pretended to be Bai. Not only was they pretended to be in the White Knight, but they also vaguely found that they were deprived of their right to choose a mate in the internship unit. Then, they heard the diagnosis of Bai, and actually concluded that G Wavelength had that kind of fetish. It's weird. Haha, this kid has finally shown his feet. Who can determine his personal vices? It's nonsense at first glance. This anchor is obviously fraudulent, so he just doesn't ask anything about the pulse, and he comes up with a conclusion casually. Is this what Chinese medicine should do? However, before these people could finish, with Bai's questioning in the live broadcast room, they realized that they might be slapped in the face. Because G Wavelength quickly admitted it, this confirmed Bai's assertion. For a moment, the whole office fell silent again. Embarrassed. Traditional Chinese medicine looks at the pulse and infers the patient's living habits, which is actually a bit ridiculous. However, it is also possible to infer one or two from a combination of multiple pulse signs and physiognomy, as well as the behavior of the patient. This shows that Bai's pulse work is completely home. And they are also the ones who have taken the pulse, and they want to tell the patient's situation in detail like Bai, but not everyone can do it. At least not many people here dare to admit that there are so many things that can be analyzed from the pulse. Unless the other party's pulse is completely in accordance with the textbook. But this is simply not possible. Besides, just before taking the pulse, Bai also let G Wavelength wash his hands. This is equivalent to saying that by yes pulse medicine technique has been able to ignore some objective interference and reach a certain level. They know very well that maybe teacher Lin Wanfan can't do this. If nothing else, this anchor may have something in terms of pulse. At this time, a TCM intern who graduated with a doctorate spoke. He affirmed the ability of the White Knight. After all, the strength was there in front of everyone, and there was no point in belittling it. It will also leave a bad impression on the younger sisters. It's just that, listening to his tone, he hasn't fully approved of Baya yet. But yes. You see, he is verbose and shakes out the patient's privacy in the live broadcast room, as if he will only take the pulse. The traditional Chinese medicine passed down by our ancestors is not something that can be achieved by just taking the pulse. The main thing to look at is the means of curing diseases, such as acupuncture. Does he know it? I don't even have the qualifications to practice acupuncture and moxibustion. In terms of acupuncture, looking at him so young, it is estimated that even the younger brothers and sisters can't compare, let alone me. Speaking of acupuncture, the doctoral graduate's chest suddenly straightened up, and he was very proud in his heart. The level of acupuncture and moxibustion is based on the in-depth understanding of the theory of Chinese medicine. He is an academic, and he has studied the theory of Chinese medicine for 10 years. He didn't believe in how many systematic theories of Chinese medicine there were in those folk Chinese medicine halls. At present, it is difficult to distinguish between true and false folk Chinese medicine, and it is still mixed. And it's good that this anchor is so young, he didn't go the wrong way. When the people next to him heard the words of the senior brother, they also echoed it. Only Lu Xiao couldn't help but complain in his heart. I'm so embarrassed. Who doesn't know that your doctorate major is acupuncture? How can you be embarrassed to compare with young people in their early 20s? Besides, it's not like you haven't given Ji Bakang acupuncture. Is it useful? It may be effective, but it's not stable for long. Now G wavelength has been in our hospital for 3 years without effect, so he went to the small hospital in the White Knight. Come to think of this. Lu Xiao sighed slightly in his heart, and then a thought couldn't help but pop up in his mind. This White Knight is so powerful, and the ability to take the pulse at a young age is so good, maybe acupuncture will too. However, after thinking about it, she also said and shook her head, how is this possible? In his early 20s, it is already rare to be proficient in pulse control, and he can also do acupuncture. Isn't that the holy son of Chinese medicine in the novel? Imperial Capital Medical University. Ni Guanghai looked at Bai Ye's performance, and his face gradually changed from disbelief to appreciation. Then there was a constant nod of the head. Yes, this little guy is talking about the Tao. The kidney is the innate foundation, and the spleen is the acquired foundation. That patient is indeed overindulgent. This little guy can see at a glance that he has 2 brushes. The demeanor and movements of the pulse are also very sophisticated, not bad. A talent indeed. Ni Guanghai commented happily, and naturally saw from Bai Ye's face that he was not simple. The spirit is full, and the facial features shine like a mirror. It's like watching the nature, the 4 seasons, and the mountains and rivers, giving people a comfortable feeling. This is very rare among young people in modern cities. Even the descendants of those families of traditional Chinese medicine have a somewhat dull face under the influence of modern eating habits. But Bai Ye is completely different, and his complexion is like that of a pure yang baby. Therefore, watching the live broadcast of White Knight, Ni Guanghai likes it more and more the more he watches it. However, when I heard the quaint wavelength say that the tadpoles that can give birth to people are ordinary proteins, he stood up angrily. Stupid. 10 drops of blood. Loss is not only those elements in Western medicine, but also a large number of innate and acquired essences. Ni Guanghai was so angry that he immediately clicked on the barrage frame and prepared to fight back. But I hesitated when I saw the barrage full of screens. With so many barrages, it is difficult for people to notice their advice, even if they see it, they should be the wind in their ears. Sorrow is the way to go. Many people, even some doctors, think that those essences are simple proteins that can be replenished by eating. This is very wrong, at least not entirely in the eyes of Chinese medicine. Persuade you not to shake the dragon in your hand, and don't take your children to respect internet celebrities. In this regard, he has published a monograph, but unfortunately the voice is too quiet. Ni Guanghai sighed, feeling powerless, and then a thought popped up in his mind. He looked at Bai Ye. Now that he was so popular, he might be able to make the public recognize this. But this involves a complex dialectical and philosophical view of Chinese medicine. Can this young man explain it in an easy-to-understand manner? He is so young and doesn't know how deep his understanding of Chinese medicine is. Folk Chinese medicine is too mixed, and many systems are still biased and imperfect. Traditional Chinese medicine, infertility, crazy social death patients. Author, Cold Shower in Winter. Chapter 18. Mo Dubai's Traditional Chinese Medicine Museum. Bai Ye looked at Ji Wavelength's tired eyes, and when he heard his point of view again, he sneered in his heart. He didn't speak immediately, but looked directly into Ji Wavelength's eyes with burning eyes. After looking at it directly, Ji Wavelength felt as if he was burned by the sun, and his eyes immediately avoided it. If you don't do bad things, how can you be like a child, obviously rich in the second generation, and you don't dare to look directly at people? It's too empty, and you can see from your eyes that this kind of person can't control her thoughts. One thought is here, another thought is there. It's just that you can't focus on the present moment. This is called the dispersion of God. If left unchecked, the next step is a multitude of diseases, which can also lead to anxiety, schizophrenia, and other mental illnesses. In this way, if he is not investigated, isn't that equivalent to seeing death and not saving him? If the concept is not reversed, no matter how good acupuncture is, it can only save a lifetime. He is an upright Chinese medicine practitioner, and he must not do this. Thinking of this, Bai Ye said leisurely. Your opinion will kill you. Ah, hearing Bai Ye's words, Ji Wavelength was directly stunned. Bai Ye looked directly into his eyes just now, as if he had seen through his soul, which directly brought him an invisible shock. You just equated the nutrients that make up a tadpole with the nutrients of a glass of milk, right? It seems so reasonable to decompose, but tadpoles can give birth to people, can milk? I can't. For example, a CD-ROM contains a lot of information. If only the chemical composition is analyzed, the composition of this disk is the same as that of a disposable lunchbox. But can a CD-ROM full of information be worth as much as a disposable lunchbox? The various life information contained in tadpoles is extremely concentrated and condensed, and it is by no means comparable to milk and eggs. Hearing this, Ji Wavelength's eyes widened, and the simple comparisons and metaphors were easy to understand, which made him faintly touched. And before he could speak, Bai Ye continued. In the concept of traditional Chinese medicine, the place where sperm is produced is not the eggs, but the three cocks. A stream of energy generated from the three cocks in the abdomen coalesces into a tangible substance like a tadpole. This is to consume both innate and acquired essence. There are a lot of sperm tablets on the market now, and some of the ingredients in them are similar to Viagra, which will overdraw your essence. Over time, you will find yourself more weak, and then you will become sick, which will lead to your current symptoms. Western medicine has also found that some of the substances in tadpoles are the same as the spinal fluid germinal substances of the human body. Therefore, it is difficult to make up for these overdrafts simply by eating. Do you understand? Looking at Bai Ye's burning eyes, Ji Wavelength swallowed his saliva again and eased for a while. Couldn't help but speak weakly. White, Dr. Bai, didn't you say that if you are full, you will overflow? When it's full, it will automatically overflow and be wasted, In fact, I eat raw sperm tablets and think about making the eggs full in advance, and then. As he spoke, G wavelength found that he couldn't go on. Because as he overflowed more and more, especially recently, every time he spilled, his brain twitched, and then his whole body became sore. It really confirms Dr. Bai's statement. I misunderstood. Bai sighed leisurely, and then said seriously. This essence doesn't just refer to a tadpole. You have to understand it as qi, which is common to both men and women. It's true that Jingmen is overflowing, but in Chinese medicine, Jingmen has three directions. One is upward, up to the brain, so you will find that many people are talented, quick-witted, and have excellent memory. The second is all over the body, which means that the shape is fixed, so you will find that some people have better results in muscle training. The third is obscenity, which is the switch designed by God, and it is caused by desires and thoughts. Buzz. Listen to the words of the White Knight. G wavelength was stunned again, and he felt deafening, like a yellow bell and a clang. All of a sudden, he understood a lot of the essential logic of human differentiation. It gave him a sense of epiphany. If Hakia had told him these truths, he might never have known them for the rest of his life. In a trance, G wavelength looked at the White Knight in a daze, as if he felt that the outline of the White Knight gave birth to a circle of holy brilliance. In astonishment, G wavelength sighed, lowered his head in shame, and said weakly. Dr. Bai is right, it seems that I need to moderate a bit. The Yellow Emperor's internal scripture says that illness comes from overuse, but you. Baya looked at G wavelength with a question mark on his face, and said directly. You need to quit completely. No. No, White, Dr. Bai, I checked the quality of the tadpoles last month. Q wavelength is a little unbelievable. Let me tell you a trivia. Hearing G wavelength's words, Baya smiled. None of the hospitals that check the quality of tadpoles is completely accurate and can only be used as a reference. What's more, you didn't abstain from sex for 3 to 7 days according to the doctor's instructions, and you went for a test after eating raw sperm tablets. It's the equivalent of cheating, you have to understand it at a micro level. Your little tadpole is like a soldier who can't make it to the finish line on that long, checkpoint-filled tree-lined path. When G wavelength heard this, his whole body stiffened, and then he was completely stunned, and his back was cold. He couldn't refute it, the facts were in front of him. It's ridiculous to say, he hasn't had any of his girlfriends get pregnant in 3 years. It turns out that all this, it won't be the other party's problem, it's his own problem. Realizing this, G wavelength's face turned red into a small apple in an instant, and he couldn't wait to find a noodle and hang himself. And when his girlfriends saw G wavelength's reaction, they couldn't help but cover their mouths and restrain the expressions on their faces, but they were happy in their hearts. You just know that G shall. You know this if you think about it on your toes. Then they looked at the White Knight, their eyes full of admiration. In just a few words, Ji Shao can realize his mistakes and explain the profound theories of Chinese medicine, which is really amazing. Well, I made it myself. G wavelength's face twitched, and he was so embarrassed that he had nowhere to put it. Slowed down for a while, then took a long breath, thinking that the society would die, and it would be better to jump into the fire pit if the cliff was reined in. Besides, maybe Dr. Bai has a treatment plan. Thinking of this, G wavelength asked with a wistful look. Dr. Bai, then I still have no treatment, not to mention fertility problems. I want to get back to health soon. Hearing this, Bai couldn't help but smile. I was about to say that he should consider acupuncture, but I didn't expect this kid to be so good and took the initiative to speak. Since this is the case, Bai is ready to show his skills, so he smiled. Of course you have been cured, and you don't have any serious physical and mental problems now. Lie there, I'll give you some acupuncture. Guaranteed immediate results, maybe it will make you successful in a month. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Traditional Chinese medicine, infertility, crazy social death patients. Author, Cold Shower in Winter. Chapter 19. White Knight is so confident. Ordinary patients who overindulge want to recover as healthy. It is often necessary to abstain from color therapy, not to make up for diarrhea, and then to build a foundation in 100 days. Then learn a certain method, and then refine the chi and transform the gods, and refine the gods to return to the void. It's too slow, and the requirements don't have to be so high, people are just in a hurry to have a baby. He has God-level acupuncture here, and a prick can improve the balance of yin and yang in his body, which is quite similar to the effect of earth-shattering creation. At this time, netizens in the live broadcast room. The anchor is so wise at a young age. I only know 1 drop of essence and 10 drops of blood, but I don't know that essence is so expensive. The anchor's merits are immeasurable, and traditional craftsmanship is indeed a vice, and many young people still don't know it well. It makes sense, take a small notebook and write it down. Haha, that friend is yourself. Wait a minute, the anchor just said that he can also do acupuncture. Don't give this kid hemiplegia. Not to mention acupuncture, even if I get an injection, I don't dare to let such a young person come and give me an injection. Tisk, don't say it, it reminds me of a Jianghu Langzhong who used acupuncture to treat the old man, and as a result, he sent people to the West. The anchor's previous operation is very good, and he won't get rid of it now. If something goes wrong with someone, he will be ruined at a young age. This season's wavelength, shouldn't it be only Kun Chang, not long-lived? A group of netizens in the live broadcast room looked at the White Knight consultation, and they were originally convinced. But after hearing that Baya was going to have acupuncture, they were all stunned. In the eyes of most people, acupuncture is the exclusive domain of old Chinese medicine. Is not a really knowledgeable old Chinese medicine doctor, ordinary people don't dare to let others give them acupuncture. Don't even dare to do it for free. You know, there are too many cases of acupuncture and moxibustion crippling people on the internet. Obstetrics and Gynecology Hospital affiliated to Modu University. Among Lin Wanfan's interns. When they watched the live broadcast and heard Baya say that they wanted acupuncture, they were shocked again. Especially the senior brother who graduated with a doctorate who had just spoken, he felt even more embarrassed on his face. Soon, though, they felt that something was wrong. Acupuncture, like prescription medicine, has strict national standards, and if it is not done well, it is illegal. After all, in recent years, there have been too many charlatans who have cured people through acupuncture, and the state has been very strict. To put it bluntly, if you want acupuncture, you must at least have a TCM acupuncturist qualification certificate. And this certificate also has high requirements for academic qualifications, at least a bachelor's degree, and at least 1 year of clinical practice experience before you can apply for the exam. But seeing that Baya is so young, they even suspect that Baya has not even graduated from an undergraduate degree, let alone clinical and teacher. So in the eyes of these interns, White Knight is a bit too big. Even if he knows some acupuncture and moxibustion, he didn't break Ji Ba Kane, but he is also guilty of leaving the sequelae. What's more, this kid may also be misdiagnosed. Go find Teacher Lin, you have to ask Teacher Lin to notify G wavelength to come back. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. Come to think of this. These interns hurriedly came to Lin Wanfan's office. The doctoral student explained the situation in a timely manner, thinking that he would be praised by Mr. Lin. But I didn't expect it. What are you panicking about? What are you panicking about? Lin Wanfan pushed down the glasses on the bridge of her nose, and her eyes turned to them from the live broadcast room of the White Knight. "This Bai's Chinese Medicine Museum, I have just checked, and they have a state-recognized senior Chinese medicine practice qualification certificate. They are 100-year-old Chinese medicine hall, which may be different from the path taken by your academy. You are still interning with me, and you haven't even applied for the exam for which you do have expertise in traditional Chinese medicine, but you still have the face to question others without investigation." The voice fell. The interns were speechless. Especially when the senior brother heard Lin Wanfen say this, he even froze his breathing. Although he is a doctoral student and has been studying medicine for 10 years, he has not yet applied for the entry-level assessment of Chinese medicine. "Because I have studied theory in school, and the application condition is to have a teacher or internship experience." What shocked him was that the process from the entrance examination to obtaining the senior TCM practice qualification certificate was much more difficult than that from undergraduate to doctoral. This is not an exaggeration at all, because Chinese medicine is so complex and profound. Many old Chinese medicine practitioners live to learn from the old. Even if they read a basic Yellow Emperor's Neijing 100 times, they dare not say that they fully comprehend it. Lu Xiao and other interns soon realized this, and their faces were equally shocked. "Isn't this the legendary Holy Son of Chinese medicine? Ahem, you move a stool and sit down. I just took you to watch the live broadcast of the White Knight, and I explained to you acupuncture for kidney deficiency." Seeing these interns stunned, Lin Wanfen said to them with a faint smile, changing from the seriousness of the past. She hadn't lectured to these people for a long time, but now she wanted to answer their questions while she wasn't busy. That's because Bai Yes' remarks just now gave her a lot of joy and made her passionate. In particular, Bai Yes' understanding of traditional Chinese medicine, infertility, spirit, and life level is really much beyond his peers. Generally, people who have no faith and do not recognize traditional culture cannot have an in-depth understanding of the connotation of traditional Chinese medicine. This kind of faith can only be obtained by one's age, experience, or tragic experience. But Bai Ye can have this kind of insight at such a young age, which makes Lin Wanfen feel a sense of luck, and she is glad that Huaxia Chinese medicine has such a good inheritance. When these interns heard Mr. Lin say this, they were all excited, and it was very rare to hear Mr. Lin give lectures during their internship in the hospital. "It seems that I have to thank Bai Ye a lot." At this time, the doctoral student still faintly felt that something was wrong. Although it was a little embarrassing to be slapped in the face by stepping on the rhythm, he still subconsciously felt that the TCM qualification certificate of the Bai family Chinese medicine pavilion would not be Bai Yes, but more likely Bai Yes' father. Therefore, he plans to take a good look at how to apply needles in the White Knight, and then take the opportunity to save face. Traditional Chinese medicine, infertility, crazy social death patients. Author, Cold Shower in Winter. Chapter 20. Imperial Capital Medical University. When Ni Guanghai heard Bai Yes' words, he couldn't help but clap his hands and say yes. The knowledge of Chinese medicine has nothing to do with most modern technology, because no matter how sophisticated the current scientific and technological instruments are, they cannot verify the essence, qi, spirit, meridians, and acupoints of the theoretical power of Chinese medicine. This is a very mysterious thing. He thought that the young White Knight would only read from the book. But I didn't expect Bai Ye to understand the dialectic of Chinese medicine very well, comparing small tadpoles with milk, and comparing lunch boxes with high-rise buildings. What a humorous and subtle one. And Bai Ye's understanding of Jing is also the key to hitting directly. It is clear that the energy to produce tadpoles comes from the lower of the three cokes. And the fire of the lower scorch comes from the innate sealed kidney qi and the acquired essence of the spleen and stomach. Of course, this does not need to be so clear. In short, Bai Ye's narration is easy to understand. As long as you are not an idiot, you can make netizens in the live broadcast room aware of it. And judging from the barrage, Bai Ye did this, which is a merit. Ni Guanghai looked at the flying barrage, and the corners of his mouth smiled. Good Chinese medicine is realized from the way of heaven and earth. The size of the perception determines the level of level. This little guy's level is not low. Ni Guanghai looked at Bai Ye like a big baby now, and couldn't help but take out a cigarette and smoke it. I had quit smoking for half a year, but now I'm happy. I'm sorry for not smoking. Then, he heard Bai Ye say that he was going to do acupuncture for G wavelength. He spat out the smoke ring, and at the same time, a trace of doubt flashed on his face, and at the same time, a thick expectation appeared. Although this little guy looks young, if he has been immersed in a family of traditional Chinese medicine since he was a child, it is not surprising that he can do acupuncture. As a professor of traditional Chinese medicine at Imperial Capital Medical University, he knows very well that it is difficult to produce excellent Chinese medicine in large-scale classes or colleges. Because most of the colleges and universities are dressed in the skin of traditional Chinese medicine, they still have the cognition of Western medicine in their bones. And the few theories of Chinese medicine are too superficial or incomprehensible, unless you read Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism when you get a doctorate. However, if a child from a family of traditional Chinese medicine like Bai Ye can just abandon the concept of logical positivism and get in touch with the ancient traditional yin and yang culture, which is the basis for human beings to understand the universe, nature, and life, from an early age, then being proficient in acupuncture can also be done. Thinking about it, he was ashamed that his achievements in acupuncture were still after the age of 50, and now looking at Bai Ye preparing to apply needles, he couldn't help but wonder what Bai Ye's acupuncture level was. Then, I couldn't help but think of another point. This patient already has a serious sex addiction, and acupuncture can improve it for a while, but it is difficult to last. After all, the bad habit is difficult to change. Unless the legendary Fi Shen needle is used, the patient can reach a state of full and not lustful for a long time. It's a pity that this kind of mysterious Fi divine needle is probably only understood by the emperor's descendants, and ordinary Chinese medicine families can't take it out. It is still necessary to increase the promotion of traditional Chinese medicine culture, and young people must not be led astray, otherwise there will be more infertility. Magic City. Bai's Traditional Chinese Medicine Museum. When G Wavelength heard Bai Ye say that he could do acupuncture, his heart also chuckled. This anchor looks very powerful, but acupuncture, this thing is a bit dangerous. But when I think of Bai Ye, I can even accurately guess my own taste and continuous catheter. I feel that such a powerful doctor should not say big things. He doesn't expect to successfully fertilize his girlfriend in a month now, but is satisfied that he can regain his former vigor within a month. And so, G Wavelength just half pushed, took off his shirt and lay on the small bed on the side. And Bai Ye looked at G Wavelength lying on the bed on the side, and all kinds of knowledge about acupuncture immediately appeared in his mind. After completing the procedures such as disinfection, acupuncture began. If you have God's help. And the quarter wavelength on the side was still very nervous, thinking that it would be sore and swollen or something, but it turned out to feel a little Xiao's cold. Immediately after, it was as if a wave of energy began to merge with his limbs, making him feel very comfortable. Then came a gentle sleepiness, like the gentle waves lapping against the boat. This feeling shook his heart. The anchor is really a miracle, doctor. I didn't expect that although I died once, I would also get a chance, and my waist and body were saved. This is the combination of good and bad. At this moment, G Wavelength completely let down his guard in his heart and let Bai Ye prick the needle. Then, after a while, he was snoring and dozing off. Seeing this scene, G Wavelength's three girlfriends were all stunned, and their eyes widened. Is this some kind of magic? 2 stitches will make people fall asleep, and it will still be like thunder. The 3 girls were puzzled, but their eyes looking at Bai Ye couldn't help but be full of adoration. It's simple. Bai Ye was at ease, and when he saw them staring at him, he spoke. He didn't have a heart and kidneys before, and he had a bad night's sleep. Under the effect of my acupuncture, the yang enters the yin, the meridians are dredged, and the process of repairing the body begins. It was a very comfortable process, similar to a massage. Hearing this, the three girls were stunned, although they didn't understand, they felt so powerful. By the way, a word of caution. Baya looked at their shocked expressions and spoke leisurely. Don't eat too much seafood. If you want to eat, add more ginger, or simply bring a bottle of Huaxiang Genki mixture and take it after a meal. This helps you improve your chances of getting pregnant. Huh, a girl couldn't help but wonder, Dr. Bai can even tell that we love seafood. But why do you bring Huaxiang Genki mixture? I smell seafood in your breath. Bai smiled faintly. Seafood is a very cold food, I won't explain it if there is a lot, just remember it. The three girls nodded hurriedly, they had all rinsed their mouths before they came, but they didn't expect Baya to smell it. Then I immediately realized that it was no wonder that Baya took the pulse and saw that Ji Shao had a habit of craftsmanship, and there were really traces to follow instead of guessing. Come to think of this. The eyes of the three girls looking at Baya changed again, they used to worship, but now they couldn't help but have a trace of admiration after being cared for. With this in mind, they especially cherish the time they spend with Baya. However, I thought that Baya would have to do acupuncture for at least half an hour or an hour. But I didn't expect that in less than 5 minutes, Baya began to take the needle. This operation not only stunned them, but even netizens in the live broadcast room were stunned.